Hello, and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within us. I'm Maria Luce, your host, a certified hypnotist, psychic medium, and astrologer. Today's episode is part 3 of the Medical Astrology series, and I'm calling this Celestial Bodies in Your Body. I'm going to start with a quote again. Microscopes and CAT scans offer new vision into the body and etiological processes, but can neither see into the vibrational patterns behind disease manifestation, nor time surgery, treatment, convalescence, or potential death. And that quote is by Judith Hill in her book, Medical Astrology for Health Practitioners, A Healer's Guide. And perhaps the mention of death grabbed your attention. So I'm going to immediately counter that by saying that the planets and the signs do not always manifest as health issues, of which, although inevitable, death may be considered a health issue by some. Just another way to look at it. Inevitable or a health issue. Sometimes it's one or the other or both. So last week, I introduced Judith Hill's Code of Medical Astrology, and I provided a detailed breakdown of the rulership of the body parts by the 12 zodiacal signs. And I went through verbatim her text because I thought it was important to really lay that detailed groundwork. And there's a simplified visual way of looking at uh, those 12 rulership areas. And it's often called zodiac man, or Hill calls it zodiacal man. And it's a graphic and it's a device that was used by Renaissance physicians really as a primary diagnostic tool. And also, they used it to do some estimations on treatment and how to time it. And it's essentially a map or a graph, and it's a image of a person. Back then, of course, it was a man. So I'm going to put a link to a picture in the show notes. And what it does is it divides up those 12 jurisdictions among the 12 signs. So the placement of any natal planet in that depiction, depending on which of those 12 zones it's in, it can be thought of as this reception zone for whatever that planet's core energy is. And the energy is described via its temperature, its speed, and its level of tension. And again, I want to stress that even though I say reception zone for where that natal planet sits, it doesn't mean it's a magnet and it's going to attract these afflictions. Those things may never be present. So they may never, fall into that reception area. And there are endless lists of specific diseases and cures and glands and hormones, etc., which are considered governed by each planet. However, this isn't super useful unless you've had extensive training in how to assemble all of those symptoms into a cohesive pattern, or a disease or syndrome, and then also have that training to identify what the root cause is, and further from there to come up with some kind of treatment or cure. But the fact that this knowledge was used so broadly and for so many years, and it became maligned as a means to concentrate power, really, is reason enough for me to share it. And if you happen to find resonance with your own body's experience, then that serves my other aim, which is just to help people understand themselves better. So we instinctively know energetics because that is how our bodies receive information. So think of the experience of eating a slice of cucumber, or maybe drinking some water, some spa water with cucumber slices in it. And now think about eating a jalapeno pepper or, eating a mouthful of sliced jalapenos that happen to be on top of your burrito or something. So I didn't have to use the adjectives cool or hot. Your body just knows. As I describe the energetics of each planet in words, try to understand these planets more wholly as an experience of their energies, in that same way that I talked about the cucumber and the jalapenos. So I'm going to go through the information that's in Judith Hill's book, that where that quote came from. And this time I'm not going to go verbatim. There's just so much information and detail in there. Um, and you'll see even what I have listed here. Um, if you're listening, you'll just hear me list it. You won't see it unless you hop over to my Substack, which I encourage you to do because there's lots of links and things there. But I'm going to just be listing out most of the planets today. I'm saving a couple and I'll explain why at the end. And I do want to give one more disclaimer. Um, this information is not meant to diagnose anything happening with you or your body. Consult your medical health wellness team if you do have any concerns. I'm not qualified to be a healthcare practitioner, so do not consider any of this to be medical advice or to warrant a consultation. I'm going to begin with the sun. Hill defines this as the vital force, life battery, and light. So the element that the sun is in, and I'm also going to link to a series I did on the elements in astrology in the show notes because I noticed that the elements come up a few times in this episode as well. So the element that the sun is in at the time of your birth will be an overall influence. So each sun sign belongs to one of four elements. And then the specifics of your sun's position in your birth chart, meaning like what house it's in, if it's in a strong aspect with anything else, if it's on an angle, etc. Those details will speak to the innate quality and quantity of the vital force. And the body associations for the sun is that it co-rules the heart with Leo, it governs the brain with the moon, Mercury, Aries, and Taurus, and the sun governs the right eye in males and left eye in females. The associated maladies are, and remember, associated does not equal a predetermined cause of anything, but the associated maladies for the sun are stroke, aneurysm, heart attack, hypertension, migraines, and glaucoma. The moon distributes the vital force, and the moon's actions are extensive and complicated because they have to do with the manner and rate of flow of fluids, of which we are 70%, and electromagnetic currents, of which our cells carry because of the poles, as well as adaptation, absorption, and sensitivity. And the body zone that houses the moon is typically more sensitive to fluid extremes. And then the element that the moon is in can indicate what will be most supportive to health. For example, if you have a fire moon, you may not want to do drying types of treatments or foods often. There are different body associations as well with the moon, and some of them came up in the last episode, because the moon co-governs the stomach, the breast, the mucous membranes with Cancer, which we talked about last time, and the uterus with Scorpio, which we also discussed. And then with Venus, the moon influences all of the female cycles. And it has influence in the brain and the actions of the lungs. The moon rules the right eye in females and the left eye in males. Mercury is sense reception and nerves. And this planet has a real jumpy, chameleon like energy because it takes on the character of any sign it happens to be in or passing through. The body zone that hosts Mercury is more prone, therefore, to this kind of nervous tension. And the body associations are that Mercury co governs the nerves, hands, and fingers with Gemini and speech. It influences the speed of neural messaging. And the associated maladies are that it's implicated in epilepsy with the moon and Uranus, cognitive, speech, and hearing disorders. Venus is pain relieving and relaxing. And I just love Hill's description as it fits with herbalism and the plants that are ruled by Venus. So, quote, the effect of Venus is magnetic, relaxed, demulcent, sexy, and either pleasantly warm or refreshingly cool as needed, in parentheses, normalizing, end quote. And the body zone, which houses Venus, can be susceptible to muscle laxity, issues with sugar or with sex. Although Hill also interjects that parts of the body in Venus's zone may be pretty. And the body associations are that Venus co governs the kidneys and ovaries with Libra, the veins with Aquarius, female genitalia with Scorpio. Venus rules sugar and estrogen with the moon and the upper levels of the body. And the associated maladies are really anything to do with all of those areas and organs. Mars, I'll discuss in the next installment. I'll explain why at the end. Jupiter is about growth and expansion. So think of being fattened up and diffusing heat widely. The possibility of growth, it's all just a little much. And the regions in the body zone where this planet is placed may be large, healthy, strong, and protected, as Hill describes. Its energy varies according to the element. It speeds up in air and fire, it goes flat in earth, and it slows in water. And the body associations, it co rules the liver with Virgo and the arterial circulation with Sag. It rules fats and components of the blood. Its associated maladies are stroke, aneurysm, and hypertension with the Sun and Mars. And I just lump it into the effects of too much, like hypercholesterolemia or liver issues from too much fat or alcohol or sugar. Saturn, I'll also discuss in the next installment. Uranus is electric, spasmodic, and cold. It's extremes and strange things. Electrical signaling, sudden onset of symptoms. The body associations are around electricity, and the associated maladies are that it's implicated with Mercury in tremors and spasms, things of that nature. Also, electromagnetic field issues, just with throwing things off balance that result in extreme situations. And then we have Neptune, which is sleepy, diffusive, and psychic. And it can be an area of leaking the vital force. And the symptoms are often described using watery terms and can be difficult to diagnose. In fact, Neptune rules misdiagnosis. Think like strange infections or hidden like things seeping in to your home space. And the body zone of Neptune's placement can be prone to leaks of all sorts, even psychic, and hidden issues. And the body associations are that Neptune rules magnetism, and the associated maladies are hidden and honestly a little bit scary, things that evade diagnostic attempts. And there are also altered mental states that compromise the person's well being. Pluto is invading, hideous, and pathogenic. Those are Hill's words, not mine. Although I imagine Pluto can be that way because of the association with Hades and the underworld, and just all kinds of like secrets, lies, and betrayals. So there are extremes of emotion and temperature. There are poisonings, there are rotting situations, intense inflammation, the use of others' parts like transplants. Because Pluto moves so slowly, there just isn't as much data as there is on the other planets. And so we don't have body associations per se. There are suspected maladies that it's associated with, like Lyme disease or strep or staph, AIDS, HIV, Ebola. Hill also just writes about designer bugs, which I suppose means biological weapons. And then finally, the South Node and the North Node. I'll discuss those in the next installment. And obviously, we all have each of these planets in our birth chart. And of course, we don't experience all of these associated maladies. So you can see how maybe the synthesis with those sign rulerships we talked about last week would be helpful in putting together a picture. And of course, it gets more complicated and nuanced once the aspects within the natal chart and the timing techniques, like transits and progressions, are considered. So we're going to keep going. But next week, I'm going to do a deep dive into the planets, which Hill describes in greater depth. And those are the ones I skipped over because just their potential impact requires more discussion. And they are Mars, because it rules acute illness, Saturn, which rules chronic illness, the South Node, which is essentially power outages in the body, and the North Node, which could be considered power surges in the body. And I think I keep saying next week, but actually, next week is going to be the Christmas week. So I'm going to issue a rerun, but it'll be on Mars or Saturn, because those are the two that we're going to go into depth when I restart. So I'm planning on just taking a couple weeks off. So I'll rerun Mars and Saturn. And then in the new year, we will pick up where we left off. And someone asked me how many episodes will be in this series. And honestly, I hadn't planned that far ahead. But I mapped it out, and I think it will be 7 total. I'm working on having an interview with a special guest that really rounds out all of the concepts that we'll be talking about and just gives this incredible real life example, and is also just an amazing person and astrologer in her own right. So that's coming, and I'll say more when I have that interview done. But until then, I hope you feel empowered to continue learning about medical astrology, continue to be consciously curious about yourself and astrology, and contact me if I can be of any help. You can always email me info@marialuz.online or check out my Substack or website. I will put a link and a coupon code in the show notes. I so appreciate you listening. I can't thank you enough. I wish you a wonderful end of 2024, and I will catch you live again in the new year. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.